I love this activity because it's really, there's a lot about it that I think is really useful. This standard here. So I'll give a bit of context actually. This is when we're looking at plant and animal ID and stuff like that. There's a lot that's about shape and pattern recognition, like recognising different shapes and stuff, and that ties into the maths element as well, because it's like with the patterns side of maths, and you can look at things like symmetry and all of that kind of thing. And so, but I think we are really kind of hardwired for that. If you think back like hundreds of thousands of years of human evolution, actually for the bulk of the time we've been humans, we've been effectively wildlife, living alongside other animals and stuff, and we've needed to know, like, to be able to identify different trees, different animals and stuff as part of our survival, like not to be eaten, to be able to eat, just for medicine, all sorts of stuff. And there's some really interesting accounts from the 1800s of various botanists and explorers going to different parts of the world, and more recently as well, like people who are interested in learning about plants and stuff like that. And there's a particular guy, a botanist, who went over to part of the Amazon, and he was speaking to this indigenous girl, and she was about 12 years old or something, and he just really wanted to learn more about these different plants that he'd come across, and she was able to tell him about the properties of about over 250 different plants, something like that. She recognised them, she was able to tell him about whether they're medicinal or edible. There's other accounts of kids even younger, 8 years old or younger, but this phenomenal understanding and knowledge. And we all have that capacity, and it just purely depends on what kind of environment we're immersed in. So if we're immersed in a world of kind of like ads and stuff like that, then we recognise logos and things. It's kind of like, I find really sad that most kids recognise more logos and things than they do, a blackberry or a sparrow or whatever. But the fact that that capacity is there, so it can very easily be turned around, so we can all play a role in it, and really kind of, it's like building kind of literacy in nature or something like that. And we can do it for ourselves as well. Like our culture generally, we're very disconnected from nature. Even people who know a fair bit about the natural world compared to people a few thousand years ago, we don't have as much kind of awareness and knowledge, but we can really build that up quite quickly. So anyway, that's a bit of a preamble to this game here, which I know I've done with some of you at least before. I find it really useful. So it's a version of a game called Kim's Game. I don't know if some of you have come across Kim's Game. I know some of you are familiar. If you're not, basically it's Kim was actually a character in a book by Rudyard Kipling, the Jungle Book guy, and in the book Kim, he was this boy, a spy, that Anglo-Indian spy who was being trained, and part of his training was that the trainer would have a tray with various different objects on the tray, just random objects, and he'd have to try and memorise what was on the tray, and in the tray then they'd be covered over, and maybe one of the objects was taken away, or different kind of versions of it, but then he'd have to kind of remember what the objects were. So it's really good, just kind of a memory exercise. For this is a kind of a different version of it, where under there's a few different parts of various plants that are just from this immediate area around here, different bits of plants and stuff. And so if you're thinking, I don't know the plants, don't worry, the point is you don't need to know them. You may recognise some or all of them, you may not know any of them, it doesn't matter. The thing is like trying to just look at the different shapes, patterns and things like that, and see if you can find them. But what we'll be doing is we're doing it as teams as well, so you do it as a group. So we could perhaps go into teams of, say, teams of 4 perhaps. Yeah, teams of 4. So what we need to do then is see if we can find all these bits, like I say, immediately around here. If there happens to be anything that looks like something that a woodpecker might eat, please don't take those photos. But yeah, so the stuff immediately around here. And then as an extra thing is that when you collect them, come back and lay them out with your group and see if you can lay them out in the pattern that they're laid out here, if that makes sense. So don't worry about it, and this isn't a test of any kind, we're not going to come and check if you got it right or anything like that, don't worry, it's just something we can do together and really just kind of enjoy that process of really trying to memorise shapes and stuff like that. So, just trying to think how mean and feeling. No, not that big. Okay. Sometimes I do it when the whole thing we do it in absolute silence, start to finish. We could do that if you want it.
It's hard to
I had a feeling with this group, I was like, absolute silence. Okay, well, let's leave that. It is a fun one to try actually. If you, as you're doing it, imagine if you were doing it that's completely silent. It really adds, and I've had worked with other very similar groups and do it, and you'd be really surprised how you can do it, like sign language or stuff like that. If you want to do it completely silent, if you want the challenge, then take it on because it's quite good fun. So what we'll do, so I'll take the top cover off. We'll give you about a minute to look at everything that's underneath, and then cover it over again. And I'll give maybe 4 minutes or something like that, and then go and find the stuff.
You've got to remember what's in there and try and bring that back.
Yes, and then lay it out in the pattern that it is here. Yeah. So you might want to come around somewhere where you can see.
It's cute at first, hoping we do again.
Okay,
Like a jam.
so that's not wrong.
I don't take
So the minute starts now. Drum roll.
Thank you. So with this, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on how this could tie. Firstly, how can this activity tie into the maths side of stuff in terms of, again, thinking if we're applying maths at a kind of a basic or early level, but just getting to key principles, what things in here could we pull out that are you had to get 9 items.
Yeah, so that's a key one. It's just like how many there is, but really
we did it as a group, but we split them into 3.
Okay,
So we collected 3 each, rather than looking for them all together.
Yeah. So is that what you meant by grouping then?
Yeah, either group like all the leaves in the group, or you have 3 of each, or different ways. All the green, all the brown. Is anything to come off the ground, to come off the tree?
Yeah.
There are green ones, brown ones.
Yeah.
Fine shapes
as well.
like the leaf I'm looking for has triangles.
Yeah.
Symmetry.
Spiky birds.
Symmetry, yeah, for sure, yeah. So it's actually tons of different applications that way. There's the overall, like as you say, just counting how many, but then there's loads of different subsets of that, isn't there? There's like how many leaves, or how many twigs, or how many green things, and bearing in mind you can do this with so many different kinds of objects as well. Different times of year, there'll be different plants around, or you could use stones or coat or whatever. And again, any of these things you can really scale down. So with really young ones, obviously this might be too challenging to have this many. Might not, you might get some real genius kids, but you can do it with very simple. If it's like a really small kid, you could do something that's just 3 different objects and things that are obviously right nearby, but just purely the fact of getting them to pay attention. So like, wow, this is here and that's there, and this whole process as well, the process that we've been doing, when you look at these things and we're covering it over, in that process, then it's being dragged through your memory. Do you know what I mean? It's actually there's that process. Already you're starting to have that imprint of this sycamore leaf or the other bits there. And the more we do that, the more familiar we become. And this is a really important part, generally of ID, but also of just this thing of we're talking about being literate in like nature literacy in a sense. Just the more exposure we have, the more we see them, the more we remember. Kind of like the examples I said with the acorn and the buttercup and stuff like that. It's building that kind of familiarity. I'm interested as well. I'm always curious, like how, like different ways that you remembered. I heard a few kind of
things being talked about, but as you're actually memorising them. But how do you find, like, when you memorise these things, it's different for different people, so it's interesting to hear.
Well, that top leaf, I think it kind of is, but I went, oh, it looked like parsley. And she went, oh, the coriander.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. So then, so like what it looks like,
But
is
what it was
like,
looked like rather than what it actually is. So
So that's really, I mean, that's actually a really helpful way of remembering a ton of different stuff. I even remember sometimes people's faces, like names, because they remember they look like someone else, or you know. So anyway, so like similarity is one. So anything else, other ways you remember memorises.
I remember I had the brown all the time.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That center rose was mine, so
Yeah. So using colour, and a pattern, both combination of colour and a pattern created by the colour. So,
Because exactly it was.
So yeah.
That reminds me of when we went on a reindeer walk, and they said to look out for that. Is that the same stuff? No, it's like the likely stuff. No.
This will be different. This is like kind of.
It just reminded me of that, so I was like,
Sorry, which one do you mean? Oh, that that's not identical to the one that they were talking about, but it's a similar looking one.
it
It's
just
another
reminded
kind
me,
of
so I was like,
Yeah,
reindeer
yeah.
food.
Yeah, it's quite pretty similar. I don't know what you mean. They called it reindeer moss, even though it's like yeah.
We used to call these lamb tails,
Oh yeah.
but I don't know what the actual name is, because they go fluffy.
yeah.
Yeah, there's a
But
few,
yeah,
a
once
few
they're-
different things that do that. Yeah, so we'll
Yeah.
look at a couple. So these are actually on the alders. We'll look more closely at why the alders are alders, and then there's also hazel as well, which have them and other things too.
Yeah.
So would they be a catkin?
So they were catkin, yeah. So yeah, quite a few different trees have catkins of different kinds. We'll look at closer at what they are.
I
Yeah.
think it was interesting because we were saying that we would take these three, and we took those three, but we'd also remembered other ones as well, even although we didn't realise we'd taken that process in of actually looking at the whole
I
nine.
see. So as an individual, you were
We
like saying
sectioned
you're
it
going to
off,
memorise
just
some of
looking
them.
at these three, but when
Yeah,
we came
yeah.
back we were like, well that's missing, without even registering we'd actually taken the whole picture in,
Yeah,
rather
yeah.
than just that section.
That's great.
as well.
Yeah. So that shows like even unconsciously we're just taking stuff in.
Yep.
So yeah, so that's a big part of it. And
the big one in the middle, I remember that as Canadian flag.
oh, okay. Yeah. So having these kind of associations is really useful as well.
That's Ireland, right in the corner, in Shamrock.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So lucky me.
Yeah. So yeah, so you can see just tons of different ways of memorising stuff, but also tons of different ways that this can apply. Texture's another one for sure, yeah.
I think God was saying in all the grids, because you're only focusing in such a small vicinity, rather than trying to look a big area, you are focused on that. You know, you could take that in picture, rather than if you spread it out right all over, would we be able to look at that and how would we do it different if it was in a bigger scale?
Oh, see, if those same things were spread out
Yeah.
wider, you can think,
I wonder if the activity would have been different
Yeah.
because it was so spread out. Because we can see that.
yeah. And some people do it, and this is more when people when we do it with plants, and if people are familiar with all the plants, so sometimes we do it on foraging and tree ID courses and stuff. Like yourselves, there'll be some people who are more familiar and some people who are not so familiar with a particular plant, but sometimes people will know the ones that will make some kind of like word association, that will use the first letter of each one and make just some kind of sentence out of it. Tons of different ways of doing it. I just find it fascinating that how we remember things. So yeah, and can you think of any variations how we could actually vary that game at all?
You could, sorry Hazel. You could take, if you're playing with kids, you could take one away and then be like, oh, which one's missing, and
Yes.
you remember, and that gets them talking, not just, looking and putting it on but it gets them talking about what they are and take away more and more, or you can kind of imagine it how they're managing and stuff. It's probably what I would do.
Yeah, that's a great one, and again, that you can do it, so you could do it where it's 3 different leaves or objects, and you may or may not have named them, but they could be like a spiky one, a round one, or whatever, and then they see, oh, the round one's missing, and then I've seen it done with a friend of mine who does a lot of kind of environmental education, including with teenagers as well, and she's really good at mentoring teenagers. Some of them I've met, their knowledge is just off the chart in terms of like what they know and what they can do, and they can like light fires with sticks and all this stuff, and where she does it, where she's got a whole load of them, and it's things like hazel, oak, alder, ash, different things, and she's done it actually. There's a video, in fact there's a resort, it's called Red Squirrel Resources, and recently I actually did a series of mammal videos for them, and it's a paid package, some of this stuff. There's a whole load of different, this isn't a kind of slight cheeky plug, but it's more, it just came to mind, but there's some free ones I think online as well, and but anyway, on one of them it's a winter sweets one, and so it was all just winter, so it's actually just twigs or trees, and a whole load of different 6 or 9 or whatever, and these are teenagers who are just, she'll take one away and they're saying, the hazel's missing, stuff, so really impressive. But again, it just shows that capacity, we can all develop it, it's, and we can scale it to different ways. Any other variations on that? So we had the taking one away as a possible.
I did something similar where I gave children a cardboard with holes, and I sent them off at the park to go and just collect. Like, what can you find? So the idea was if they had like a leaf, the stem of the leaf would fit in the hole, so they could see exactly what they were collecting, but because they could see it, it wasn't just in their hand, you could see it from different angles. So just from like an ID point of view.
We did it just in the summer there at the community gardens, where we did flowers and like maybe like fruits, so we took the flower, fruit, and then I started off with 3, and then we gradually built it up rather than starting with 9, so they are getting used to the game. And they really enjoyed it. They sort of, like, they were running around the garden looking for it, and then we'd come back and say, what was it? And I said, well, we can't show you anymore, but if it was, I'll give you a clue. So we gave them a clue, or it's red, or it's probably, so rather than showing them, again, we're giving them clues of what they were actually, and we were going back and forth, is it this? And well, we can put it down and see what it is. See what it is.
That's a great idea actually, because then that gets them then thinking, okay, red or bumpy or whatever, and actually then looking at all the other stuff that's red and bumpy. And
That's a bit with the kids though as well, so you can get, if you put them in teams, get one of the kids to describe it, see how they...
Really simple, leave it open so that they can come back. Come back and go like, oh that's fine, and go back again, so that they're not kind of like, so that they like just to get them used to the idea and used to the game.